The bedroom door swung open with a force that made the hinges groan, and there she was, Amara, his wife of 8 years, tangled in silk sheets with a man whose face Chukwuemeka knew all too well. His business partner. His supposed friend. Tunde Adebayo. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from. But here's the thing, they didn't know he could see them. They thought he was blind. For 6 months, Chukwuemeka had pretended. 6 months of stumbling through his own mansion in Ikoyi, Lagos, tapping a white cane against Italian marble floors, letting his wife guide him to the bathroom, to the dinner table, to bed. 6 months of playing the helpless billionaire who'd lost his sight in a tragic car accident. The accident had been real. The blindness? That had healed within 3 weeks. But something the doctor said during his recovery had planted a seed in Chukwuemeka's mind. Sometimes, Mr. Okonkwo, we see people's true nature only when they think we can't see them at all. So he'd kept up the act. And now, standing in the doorway with his dark sunglasses still on, his cane gripped in his trembling hand, he watched his entire world crumble. Baby, he can't hear us from downstairs. Tunde's voice was thick with satisfaction. The old man's probably still trying to find his way to the study. Amara laughed, a sound that once made Chukwuemeka's heart soar, now made it shatter. I almost feel bad sometimes. Almost. But then I remember he's worth 3 billion naira, and I stop feeling bad very quickly. When are you going to leave him? Tunde asked, his hands running through her braided hair, the same hair Chukwuemeka had paid a fortune to have done at the finest salon in Victoria Island. Leave him? Are you mad? Amara sat up, and Chukwuemeka could see her face clearly now, beautiful, cunning, cold. Why would I leave a blind billionaire who signs whatever I put in front of him? I've already transferred 12 million naira to my private account this month alone. He doesn't even check anymore. Chukwuemeka's jaw clenched so hard he thought his teeth might crack. Besides, a morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Chukwuemeka's study as Barrister Okafor spread documents across the mahogany desk. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s with gray threading through his hair, adjusted his glasses and spoke in low, measured tones. Mr. Okonkwo, what I'm about to show you will be difficult to see, even though you've suspected it all along. Chukwuemeka sat perfectly still, his sunglasses removed now that the door was locked. His eyes, clear and penetrating, fixed on the manila folders before him. Show me everything. The private investigator, a woman named Ngozi Ease, clicked open her laptop. I've been following Mrs. Okonkwo for 3 weeks, as you requested. The affair with Mr. Adebayo has been ongoing for at least 7 months, it started 2 months before your accident. The words hit like a physical blow. Before the accident. That meant Amara had been cheating when he could still see, when he was still the powerful, present husband and father. The betrayal ran deeper than he'd imagined. There's more, Ngozi continued, pulling up photographs. Amara and Tunde at a restaurant in Lekki. Entering a hotel in Ikeja. Shopping together at the Palms Mall, laughing, holding hands. But it's not just Mr. Adebayo. Chukwuemeka's head snapped up. What? There were others before him. A banker named Femi. A politician's son. Your wife has been engaged in multiple affairs over the past 3 years. Ngozi's voice was gentle but firm. I have evidence of at least 4 different relationships. The room spun. Chukwuemeka gripped the edge of the desk, his knuckles white. 4? He'd thought he was dealing with 1 act of infidelity in marriage, 1 betrayal. But this was a... His phone buzzed with a message from Okafor, the trap is set. 2 weeks until justice. But as he sat there, alone with his rage and his pain, Chukwuemeka heard something that made his blood run cold. Through the baby monitor system they'd installed throughout the house, ostensibly to help him if he fell or needed assistance, came Amara's voice from the bedroom. Tunde, we need to speed this up. He's doing estate planning. If he dies before signing everything over properly, we get nothing. Maybe it's time to help things along. Tunde's laugh. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting, the Whispering Palms Hotel in Victoria Island was the kind of place where Lagos's elite came to make deals, have affairs, and pretend they were somewhere between earth and heaven. Its rooftop bar overlooked the Atlantic Ocean, and on Thursday evening, it was packed with the city's wealthy and connected. Chukwuemeka sat in a corner booth, his sunglasses on, his cane resting against the table. To anyone watching, he was a tragic figure, the blind billionaire, nursing a glass of Chapman, waiting for his wife to finish her charity meeting downstairs. But through the tinted lenses, his sharp eyes tracked every movement in the room. And more importantly, they tracked Amara and Tunde, who sat 3 tables away, thinking they were hidden in a dimly lit section of the bar. They thought he couldn't see them. They were wrong. I'm telling you, we need to act faster, Amara hissed, leaning across the table. She wore a stunning red dress that hugged her curves, bought with his money, worn for another man. He's getting suspicious. This morning I caught him on the phone with someone, and when I asked who it was, he said he'd misdial. Chukwuemeka doesn't misdia. He's meticulous. Tunde sipped his cognac, unconcerned. You're paranoid. The man is blind, Amara. He can barely find his own bathroom. You don't understand him like I do. Amara's fingers drummed nervously on the table. Chukwuemeka Okonkwo didn't become a billionaire by being stupid. Even blind, he's dangerous. Then maybe it's time, Tunde said quietly. The pool incident. This weekend. His kids are still in South Africa. No witnesses except you, the grieving widow. Chukwuemeka's grip tightened on his glass. So they were serious. The emotional manipulation, the infidelity in marriage, the theft, all of that paled compared to this. They were genuinely planning his murder. From his pocket, his phone buzzed. A text from Ngozi, recording everything. Do not react. Stay calm. You're wired for sound and we have cameras on them. This is the evidence we needed. The private investigator was somewhere in the bar, hidden among the crowd, capturing every word, every gesture. By tomorrow morning, this conversation would be in the hands of the police, but not yet. Not until the party. Not until everyone could see what Amara and Tunde truly were. What about the children? Tunde asked. Won't they be suspicious? Amara waved her hand dismissively. Dubum and Chidera barely know their father anymore. They're practically strangers. I'll cry, play the devastated mother, and they'll inherit everything. We can ship them back to boarding school and live our lives. Hearing his children's names in her mouth, spoken with such cold calculation, made Chukwuemeka's heart crack open. Those were his babies. His son who loved football and mathematics. Tell them. Chukwuemeka's voice broke. Tell them their father loves them. Tell them he's been missing them every single day. Tell them he's not sick anymore. I will. And Chukwuemeka? You're doing the right thing. Stay safe. Don't be alone with her. Not even for a moment. After hanging up, Chukwuemeka lay in the darkness, listening to the sounds of his house. Somewhere below, he heard laughter, Amara and Tunde, celebrating their upcoming freedom, their upcoming wealth, their upcoming life together. They had no idea that the blind man they were plotting against could see everything, could hear everything, and was about to bring their entire world crashing down around them. But first, he had to survive until Saturday. His phone lit up with a message from Ngozi, bodyguards arriving at 6 a.m. One will pose as your new physical therapist. Another as a driver. They're ex-military. You'll be safe. Then another message, this one from Okafor, just landed in Johannesburg. We'll have your children home by tomorrow evening. They're so excited, Chukwuemeka. They've missed you terribly. Tears slipped from beneath his sunglasses, running down his face in the darkness. Tomorrow, he'd hold his children again. Tomorrow, he'd tell them the truth, all of it. And Saturday, the whole world would see what Amara. Friday morning broke over Lagos with the kind of humidity that made the air feel solid. Chukwuemeka sat at the breakfast table, pushing eggs around his plate while Amara read the newspaper aloud, a ritual she'd started after his accident, another part of the devoted wife performance. Oh, how lovely, she said, her voice bright. There's going to be a society party tomorrow night. The Adeyemis are celebrating their 30th anniversary. Maybe we should. Actually, Chukwuemeka interrupted softly, I've been thinking. I want to have people over tomorrow. Here. A small gathering. Amara's head snapped up. What? Chucky, you haven't wanted visitors since the accident. Why now? I'm feeling better, he said, letting a hesitant smile cross his face. My vision, it's still dark, but I feel stronger. I want to see people. I want our friends to know I'm not giving up. He could practically see the calculations running behind her eyes. A party meant witnesses, meant complications. But refusing would seem suspicious, uncaring. That's wonderful, darling, she finally said, reaching across to pat his hand. But maybe we should wait a bit longer? You're still recovering. Tomorrow, Chukwuemeka insisted, with just enough of his old authority that Amara blinked. I want it to be tomorrow. Please, Amara. Invite everyone. I want to celebrate being alive. The irony of those words hung in the air. Tomorrow, she'd planned to end that life. Now she'd have to do it in a house full of guests, or postpone her plans. Of course, Amara said tightly. I'll make the calls. As she left the room, her phone pressed to her ear, Chukwuemeka heard her whisper urgently, Tunde, we have a problem. Perfect. 20 minutes later, the front door opened. Mr. Okonkwo? A deep voice called out. I'm Emeka, your new physical therapist. Dr. Adiwale sent me. Chukwuemeka turned toward the voice, keeping his expression vague. Emeka was a mountain of a man, 6'3", built like a linebacker. His handshake was firm, professional, and his eyes, Chukwuemeka noted with relief, were sharp and alert. "Pleased to meet you," Chukwuemeka said. "My wife mentioned we'd be starting therapy soon." "Yes, sir. I'll be here daily to help with your mobility and strength training." The slight emphasis on daily told Chukwuemeka everything he needed to know. Emeka wasn't going anywhere. Protection had arrived. Throughout the morning, more new staff appeared. A driver named Chidi, ex-military like Emeka, with reflexes that suggested he'd seen combat. A security consultant named Ada who spoke with Amara about upgrading the household alarm system while actually installing hidden cameras in every room. By noon, Chukwuemeka's home had become a fortress. He was surrounded by loyal protectors, all of them playing their roles perfectly. And then, Chidera gasped. "What?" But Mama said. "I know what your mother said. And I need to tell you something difficult. Something that's going to hurt. But I need you to be brave, and I need you to trust me." For the next hour, Chukwuemeka told them everything. Not the graphic details of the infidelity in marriage, not the murder plot, they were too young for that, but enough. That he'd been pretending to be blind. That their mother had been lying. That she'd been keeping them away from him deliberately. That tomorrow, at the party, there would be some very hard truths revealed. Dubum cried. Chidera looked shell-shocked. But they listened, and when he was done, they crawled into his arms just like they had when they were little. "We hate her," Dubum said fiercely. "No," Chukwuemeka said firmly. "She's still your mother. And nothing that's happened is your fault. Do you understand? None of this is your fault. Are you going to divorce her?" Chidera asked. "Yes, my princess. I am." "Good," she said simply. "She doesn't deserve you." They fell asleep in his room that night, one on each side of him, holding on to their father like he might disappear. And Chukwuemeka lay awake, staring. "Oh." "Continue." At the ceiling, preparing himself for what tomorrow would bring. Downstairs, he could hear Amara on the phone, confirming details with Tunde. The caterers. The guests. The timing. Every Saturday arrived with the kind of oppressive heat that made Lagos feel like it was holding its breath. By evening, the Okonkwo mansion was transformed, white tents billowed on the lawn, strings of lights twinkled around the pool, and waiters in crisp uniforms circulated with trays of champagne and small chops. The guest list was a who's who of Lagos society. Oil executives and their wives. Senators and entrepreneurs. Society bloggers with their cameras ready. Everyone who mattered was there, curious to see the blind billionaire who'd invited them to what was being whispered about as his comeback party. Chukwuemeka stood in his bedroom, Emeka helping him dress in a pristine white agbada with gold threading, traditional Nigerian attire that cost more than most people's cars. His sunglasses were in place. His cane was at his side. The performance would continue for just a few more hours. "Are you ready, sir?" Emeka asked quietly. "I was born ready," Chukwuemeka replied. "Is everyone in position?" "Yes, sir. Ngozi is posing as a photographer. The police are parked 2 streets away, waiting for your signal. Barrister Okafor is already downstairs, mingling with guests. And your children are with Ada, they're safe." "Good. Then let's go end this." Downstairs, Amara held court in a stunning gold dress, her makeup flawless, her smile dazzling. She played the part of devoted wife with Oscar-worthy skill, telling everyone how proud she was of Chukwuemeka's progress, how strong he'd been through his ordeal. But Chukwuemeka noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes kept darting to Tunde, who stood across the lawn pretending to be just another guest. They were both nervous. They'd called off the pool plan due to too many witnesses, but they still thought they'd won, that the blind billionaire remained ignorant of their betrayal. "Ladies and gentlemen," Amara's voice rang out across the garden. "Thank you all so much for coming tonight. As you know, my husband has been through a terrible ordeal. But his spirit, his strength, these things can never be broken. Chucky, darling, come say hello to our guests." Chukwuemeka allowed Emeka to guide him to the center of the lawn, where a small stage had been set up. He climbed the steps carefully, playing the uncertain blind man one last time. "Thank you," he said, his voice soft and humble. "Thank you all for coming. For the past 6 months, I've been living in darkness. Unable to see the faces of the people I love. Unable to see the beauty of Lagos, my city. Unable to see." He paused, turning toward where Amara stood. "Unable to see the truth." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Something in his tone had shifted. "But here's the thing about darkness," Chukwuemeka continued, his voice growing stronger. "Sometimes, it's only when we can't see that we finally learn to truly observe. To listen. To understand what's really happening around us." Amara's smile was frozen now. Chucky, darling, maybe you should sit down. No, Chukwuemeka said, and the word cracked like a whip. I think I've been sitting down long enough. I think I've been quiet long enough. I think it's time for everyone here to see what I've been seeing for the past 6 months. With one smooth motion, he removed his sunglasses. His eyes, clear, sharp, focused, swept across the crowd. Gasps erupted. Amara went white as chalk. Surprise, Chukwuemeka said coldly. I can see. I've been able to see for 6 months. And what I've seen. He turned to face his wife directly. What I've seen would break any man's heart. Chukwuemeka, I don't understand, Amara stammered. Don't, the 11-year-old said, tears streaming down her face. Don't lie to us anymore. It was that moment, that heartbreaking moment between mother and child, that sealed everything. Even the society bloggers stopped recording, struck silent by the raw pain of it. Chukwuemeka, please, Amara's voice broke. All the polish, all the performance was gone. What remained was desperation. Please, we can talk about this. We can work it out. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but we can fix this. No, Chukwuemeka said simply. We can't. Because you didn't make mistakes, Amara. You made choices. You chose to betray our marriage. You chose to steal from me. You chose to plot my murder. And now you're going to live with the consequences of those choices. He turned to the crowd. I apologize to all of you for using this party as a venue for this revelation. But I needed witnesses. I needed everyone who knows us, who has respected us, who has done business with us, to see the truth. To see what betrayal looks like. To see what happens when someone mistakes kindness for weakness. Senator Adewale, one of Lagos's most prominent politicians, stepped forward. Chukwuemeka, we're all with you. What you've endured, no man should face that. Others nodded, murmuring agreement. The tide of public opinion had turned completely. Amara was now the pariah, the villain, the cautionary tale that would be whispered about in Lagos's high society for years to come. The police are on their way, Barrister Okafor announced. Mrs. Okonkwo, Mr. Adebayo, I advise you both to remain here and cooperate fully. You're facing charges of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit murder. Tunde, who had been silent throughout, finally spoke. Chukwuemeka, man, please. We can make a deal. I can return the money. I can testify against her. Just please. Testify against me? Amara whirled on him, fury replacing her desperation. You coward. This was your idea. You told me we had to get rid of him, that it was the only way. I never said murder. Tunde shouted back. You're the one who talked about the pool, about making it look like an accident. And there it was. The co-conspirators turning on each other, each trying to save themselves, exposing every ugly detail of their betrayal. Chukwuemeka watched it all with a strange sense of detachment. This was the woman he'd loved, the woman he'd built a life with. And this was his supposed friend, his business partner. Now they were tearing each other apart like animals. The headlines dominated every newspaper in Lagos by Sunday morning. Blind billionaire exposes cheating wife at society party. Murder plot uncovered, Lagos socialite arrested. The betrayal that shocked Nigeria. Chukwuemeka sat in his study, the morning papers spread across his desk, while Barrister Okafor outlined the legal strategy going forward. Outside, journalists camped at the gates, hoping for an interview, a comment, anything. The prosecutor is very confident, Okafor said. With the audio recordings, video evidence, and their own confessions last night, which were captured by multiple witnesses, this is about as open and shut as a case gets. Amara and Tunde are both facing 10 to 15 years. And the money? Chukwuemeka asked. We've frozen all of Amara's accounts. We're working on recovering what we can, but some of it was spent, luxury items, trips, gifts for her, lovers. Okafor's distaste was evident. We're also suing for full restitution, plus damages. Between the criminal and civil cases, she'll be financially destroyed even if she somehow avoids prison. Good. Chukwuemeka felt no satisfaction in the word, only a cold finality. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about justice. About protecting his children and his legacy. There's something else, Okafor continued, his tone careful. Amara is asking to see you. She's claiming she has information about other conspirators, people who helped her. The prosecutor thinks she might be angling for a plea deal. Absolutely not. Chukwuemeka's voice was firm. I have nothing to say to her. Whatever information she has, she can share with the police. I'm done. But even as he said it, curiosity gnawed at him. Other conspirators? Who else had been involved in the betrayal? His phone buzzed. A message from Ngozi, there's a woman here to see you. Says her name is Chioma, and she has information you need to hear. Claims she's Tunde's ex-girlfriend. Chukwuemeka exchanged glances with Okafor. Send her in. 10 minutes later, a young woman in her late 20s sat across from him. Chioma Nwosu was beautiful, well-dressed, but her eyes carried the weight of someone who'd been through her own betrayal. Mr. Okonkwo, she began, her voice steady despite obvious nervousness. I know you don't know me, but I need to tell you something about Tunde Adebayo. He did this before. To me. Chukwuemeka leaned forward. Explain. 3 years ago, I was engaged to Tunde. We were planning our wedding. But I noticed money disappearing from my business account. I own a fashion boutique in Lekki. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. When I confronted him, he denied everything. Gaslit me. Made me think I was going crazy. She pulled out a folder from her bag. Eventually, I hired a private investigator. Turns out Tunde had been stealing from me for months. And he was having an affair with a married woman, a client of mine, actually. They were planning to clean out her husband's accounts and run off together. What happened? Okafor asked. I exposed him. Went to the police. But his family is connected, his uncle is a high court judge. The case got buried. Tunde paid back some of the money, and I dropped the charges because I just wanted him out of my life. Chioma's hands trembled slightly. But when I saw the news yesterday, I realized he'd done it again. The same pattern. The same con. And I felt sick thinking I could have prevented what happened to you if I'd pressed charges harder. This isn't your fault, Chukwuemeka said gently. You were a victim too. I know. But I want to help now. I have all the evidence from my case, bank statements, text messages, photos. Maybe it can help establish a pattern of fraud. Show the court that this is who Tunde is. Okafor was already reaching for the folder. This is excellent. Pattern evidence makes the prosecution's case even stronger. Ms. Nwosu, would you be willing to testify? Absolutely. I want other women to see that men like Tunde don't change. They just find new victims. There's more. She's the one who connected Amara with a corrupt lawyer to help forge your signature on documents. She's the one who advised on the murder plot. She has medical knowledge and told them how to make it look like an accidental drowning. My mother, Chukwuemeka repeated, his voice hollow. The woman who raised me. Who taught me about honor and integrity. I'm sorry, Okafor said. I know this is. Is it prosecutable? Yes. Conspiracy, aiding and abetting fraud, potentially accessory to attempted murder. Chukwuemeka stood and walked to the window. Below, his children played in the garden, their laughter floating up. Dubum was teaching Chidera some kind of card game. They looked happy, healing. And he had to decide, did he destroy his own mother to achieve complete justice? Or did he show mercy to the woman who'd given him life, even though she'd tried to orchestrate his death? Give me 24 hours, he said finally. I need to think. That night, Chukwuemeka drove to his mother's house in Surulere, a modest home he'd bought for her years ago, filled with photographs of him as a child, trophies from his school days, memories of a life before money and power and betrayal. Obiageli Okonkwo opened the door. She was in her 70s now, gray-haired but still strong, still proud. Her face showed no surprise at seeing him. You know, she said simply. I know. She stepped aside, letting him in. They sat in her living room, surrounded by the ghosts of his childhood, and for a long moment, neither spoke. Why? Chukwuemeka finally asked. Why would you do this to me? I'm your son. You stopped being my son the day you chose that woman over my counsel, Obiageli said, her voice hard. I raised you with nothing. I worked 3 jobs to send you to school. I sacrificed everything so you could have opportunities one never had. And when I asked one thing, that you marry a Dayabi from our village, a good Igbo girl from a good family, you refused. You chose Amara. You chose your own pride over my wishes. So you tried to have me killed? Chukwuemeka's voice rose. You helped my wife plot my murder because I didn't marry who you wanted? I never wanted you dead. For the first time, emotion cracked through Obiageli's facade. I wanted you humbled. I wanted you to lose everything and come back to me, to realize that mothers know best. The murder plot, that was all Amara and that boy. When I found out what they were really planning, she stopped. You what? I tried to stop it. The day before your party, I called Amara and told her it had gone too far. That she needed to confess and beg your forgiveness. That's why she's been trying to make deals with the prosecutor, she's terrified of me testifying against her. Chukwuemeka studied his mother's face. Was she telling the truth? Or was this another manipulation, another layer of betrayal? I have the recording, Obiageli said quietly. Of my call to Amara, telling her to stop. I want you to have it. Not to absolve myself, what I did was unforgivable. But so you know that I never, ever wanted you dead. I wanted you brought low, yes. Humbled, yes. But not dead. She handed him a small recording device. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to ever speak to me again. But I needed you to know that. I needed you to know that somewhere in this twisted, evil thing I helped create, there was still a mother who couldn't let her son be murdered. 6 months later, the Lagos High Court was packed to capacity. The case of the state versus Amara Okonkwo and Tunde Adebayo had captivated the nation, becoming a symbol of domestic betrayal, corruption, and the consequences of cheating spouses thinking they were above the law. Chukwuemeka sat in the front row, Dubum and Chidera on either side of him. His children had grown in the past months, not just physically, but emotionally. Therapy had helped them process their mother's betrayal, and slowly, painfully, they were healing. The judge, a stern woman named Justice Afolabi, reviewed the documents before her. In all my years on the bench, I have rarely seen a case with such clear evidence of premeditation and malice. Mrs. Okonkwo, Mr. Adebayo, please stand. Amara rose from the defense table. She looked nothing like the polished society woman who'd hosted parties and charmed Lagos's elite. Prison had worn her down to something raw and desperate. Tunde beside her looked equally haggard, his confidence shattered. You have both been found guilty on all counts, Justice Afolabi continued. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit murder. The evidence against you was overwhelming, and your own confessions, both public and private, left no doubt as to your guilt. She paused, looking directly at Amara. What strikes me most about this case is the calculated cruelty of it. Mrs. Okonkwo, you didn't just betray your husband financially or emotionally. You exploited what you believed was his disability. You kept his children from him. And you planned his murder with a coldness that speaks to a fundamental absence of humanity. Amara's lawyer started to object, but Justice Afolabi silenced him with a look. Therefore, I sentence you, Amara Okonkwo, to 15 years in Kirikiri Maximum Security Prison. And you, Tunde Adebayo, to 12 years in the same facility. You will both be required to make full restitution of all stolen funds, and you will be prohibited from contacting Mr. Okonkwo or his children for the duration of your sentences and for 10 years thereafter. The gavel came down. It was over. Outside the courthouse, journalists swarmed, but Chukwuemeka's security team, led by the ever-faithful Emeka, kept them at bay. He made a brief statement. Today, justice was served. Not just for me, but for everyone who has ever been betrayed by someone they trusted. Domestic betrayal destroys lives, breaks families, and leaves scars that never fully heal. But it doesn't have to define us. We can survive. We can rebuild. And we can come out stronger on the other side. He looked at his children. That's what my family is doing. Moving forward. Building something new. And we're doing it without the people who tried to destroy us. Later that evening, back at the Ikoyi mansion, Chukwuemeka stood on the balcony overlooking Lagos. The city sprawled before him, chaotic and beautiful and alive. Somewhere out there, Amara and Tunde were being transported to prison. Somewhere out there, his mother lived alone with her regrets. But here, in his home, his children were laughing. Dubum had friends over, teenage boys eating too much and talking too loud. Chidera was teaching Ada, the security consultant who'd become like a second mother to her, some kind of complicated card game. Sir? Emeka appeared beside him. There's someone here to see you. A Miss Chioma Nwosu. Chukwuemeka turned, surprised. He hadn't seen Chioma since she'd given her testimony at the trial. Send her up. Chioma appeared a moment later, looking nervous but determined. I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For what? For letting me be part of the case. For giving me a chance to stand up to Tunde in court and tell my story. For weeks after the trial, other women have been reaching out to me, women Tunde conned, women Amara manipulated. They saw the case and realized they weren't alone. That they could speak up too. She pulled out a folder, a familiar gesture that made Chukwuemeka smile despite himself. We're starting a support group. For people who've experienced. Lesson 1, people show you who they really are when they think you can't see them. Trust that revelation. Lesson 2, betrayal says everything about the betrayer and nothing about the betrayed. Their actions are not a reflection of your worth. Lesson 3, sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones who hurt you most. It's not your fault, and you're allowed to walk away. Lesson 4, justice is important, but healing is more important. Don't let revenge consume you to the point where you forget to rebuild your life. Lesson 5, your children are watching. The way you handle betrayal, the grace with which you seek justice, the forgiveness you show, or don't show, these become their blueprint for handling their own hardships. Choose your actions carefully. Lesson 6, you can't change what happened. You can only decide what happens next. And that decision is power. He closed the journal and looked out at Lagos one more time. Tomorrow, he'd return to his company, to the business of building empires and creating opportunities. Next week, he'd speak at Chioma's support group. Next month, He'd take his children on a vacation, just the three of them, somewhere far from Lagos and its memories. But tonight, he was simply a man who'd survived something terrible and come out the other side. Scarred, yes. Changed, absolutely. But alive. Free. Ready to write the next chapter of his life on his own terms. The billionaire who pretended to be blind had opened his eyes in more ways than one. And what he saw now, despite all the betrayal, all the pain, all the loss, was possibility. The story of Chukwuemeka Okonkwo wasn't a tragedy. It was a resurrection. And he was just getting started. In a small cell in Kirikiri prison. Oh. Continue. Amara Okonkwo lay on a thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. 15 years. 15 years to think about what she'd done, what she'd lost, what she'd destroyed. She'd had everything, a good man, beautiful children, wealth, status. And she'd thrown it all away for what? A few thrills? Some extra money? The approval of a bitter old woman? The answer, she'd finally admitted to herself, was pride. She'd resented Chukwuemeka's success because it made her feel small. She'd cheated because she wanted to feel powerful. She'd plotted his downfall because destroying him felt like elevating herself. But in the end, the only person she'd destroyed was herself. In the distance, she could hear other inmates, some crying, some laughing, some praying. Amara didn't pray. She wasn't sure she believed in forgiveness anymore, divine or otherwise. But she did hope that somewhere, her children were healing. That they'd find a way to understand that their mother had been broken long before she'd tried to break their father. That they'd grow up to be better than both their parents, stronger, kinder, wiser. It was the only hope she had left. And in Lagos, as the city settled into night, a billionaire and his children slept peacefully, no longer haunted